Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In YR OGOF in Wales, a storm floods the river cave with 3 cavers still behind the crawls. In LECHUGILLA, every light a surveyor carries dies 600 meters from camp, days inside the deepest cave in America. And at Eagle's Nest in Florida, the guideline itself wraps a diver's tank valves 55 meters down. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On January 9th, 2026, Owen Pritchard walked past the last tourist railing in YR OGOF, the longest showcave system in Britain, and into the wild cave behind it. 17 kilometers of river-carved limestone under the SWANSEA Valley. The river makes the cave. The river owns it too. In flood, it rises 1 meter an hour. He was leading 2 others on a survey trip. Up the river series to the far sumps, 4 hours of work, and back the same way before the afternoon rain. Owen was 41 years old, a park warden from the valley below, who had logged 500 trips underground across 19 years, the one his club sent in whenever the route involved moving water. His habit was the water line. At every junction he stacked a small tower of pebbles at the river's edge, because the river tells you it is rising, he said, long before it shows you. The forecast gave them until 4 o'clock. The plan used 3. What he didn't know, the storm had already changed its mind. Behind him came his regular pair, a nurse from Brecon on her 90th trip underground, and a quiet engineering student on his 12th, carrying the spare rope and the survey book between them. Here is what you need to understand about YR OGOF. The mountain above it is a funnel. Rain falling on the moor arrives in the cave within 2 hours, and the river series answers a hard storm by rising 1 meter an hour. And the lowest passages, the wet crawls between the big chambers, flood to the roof first, closing the way out like doors being shut one by one down a corridor. Because the crawls close first, a party caught behind them is trapped until the pulse passes, however long that takes. The trip in ran clean, boots wading the knee-deep river, cold pushing through wetsuit socks, tape measures clicking in the survey stations, water murmuring off every wall, 3 lamps working up the streamway with the easy rhythm of people who had done this 100 times. They reached the far sumps on schedule and turned for home with the survey book full. What they didn't know, the rain had come in off the sea 3 hours early, and the moor above them was already running like a roof. At the 4th junction, that is when the pebbles told him, because the little tower he had stacked on the way in was gone. Not knocked over, gone. And the river sliding past his boots was brown and pushing. The wet crawl they had come through that morning was already a black slot half full of moving water. What he knew, standing in the rising river with 2 people behind him, the way out closed in this order. The crawl first, then the low arch, then nothing until the flood pulse passed. And that habit, a tower of pebbles at every junction, had just bought them their 10-minute head start. Panic wanted its turn on the ledge road. The crawl was flooding. The river kept rising. They were trapped. Nobody said the word out loud in the dark, because this is the arithmetic of a flood pulse. The river rises 1 meter an hour. The crawl held perhaps 20 minutes of airspace. The water was 8 degrees, and 8 degrees of moving water takes a wet caver's judgment away from him inside 2 hours. The race to the arch could not be won. It could only be waited out. 3 people stood in a cave that was filling. 1 ledge sat above the flood line, and the river had all night to spend. Watch a man spend 19 years of habit on 1 decision. He turned them around, away from the way out. First, back upstream, to the high ledge above the 3rd chamber, the one place the water line on the wall said the river had never reached. Second, everything cold-proof out of the bags, survival sacks, the stove, 1 lamp burning and 2 saved, and the 3 of them wedged together on rock. The river climbed the wall below them in the dark, half a meter in the 1st hour, a hand's width in the 2nd, close enough by the 3rd to touch. Put yourself on that ledge for 1 minute of it. Brown water where the passage used to be. a stove flame the size of a thumb, and the sound of your own way out, roaring somewhere under the flood. The river crested a meter below the ledge just after midnight, held there for an hour, and began, slowly, grudgingly, to fall. At dawn, the crawl reopened as a black slot with a hand of air over the water, and Owen went through it first, on his back, lips against the roof, the place where panic drowns a caver faster than water does, reading the airspace for the two behind him. They came out past the tourist railings at 7 in the morning, 11 hours late, into a valley still dripping, 3 cold cavers, and a full survey book. All 3 survived on one ledge and a tower of missing pebbles, and the club's report ruled it a forecast failure met by a correct retreat. River trips now carry a hard turnaround gauge reading, and every party leaves a watcher on the surface when the moor is saturated. The river still runs through the longest showcave system in Britain, still answers the moor within 2 hours, and still closes the wet crawls first in every flood. Owen still stacks his pebbles at every junction, 500 trips on. The river tells you before it shows you, he tells the new ones at the entrance bridge. So build the little tower, and believe it the day it disappears. On March 3, 2026, Ruth Calloway climbed down the entrance culvert of LECHUGUILLA and started a 7-day camp trip into the deepest limestone cave in the continental United States, 240 kilometers of surveyed passage under the New Mexico desert. The cave is a week long, the dark in it is total, and the rock never changes temperature, 12 degrees, forever. She was one of a 6-person expedition, 3 days of travel to the deep camp, 3 days of survey, and out. Ruth was 43 years old, a school librarian from Tucson who spent every weekend underground and had logged 16 years and 400 trips of expedition caving, the one her team trusted to survey alone. Her habit was light, 3 lamps on her at all times, because 3 is 2, she told her son, 2 is 1, and 1 is none. The final push was small, 600 meters from camp, resketch one passage, 2 hours. What she didn't know, 2 of her 3 lights were already spent. Here is what you need to understand about LECHUGUILLA. Distance in it is measured in days, not meters. A caver at the deep camps is further from help, in hours, than a climber high on Everest. And a caver stranded there without light is a prisoner of the blackness itself. And the cave holds 20 degrees less than body heat, everywhere, forever. Sit still in it long enough, and the rock will slowly take your temperature down to its own. The trip in ran perfectly. 3 days of boulder floors grinding under boots, rope hissing through descenders on the entrance pitches, camp stoves ticking in the silence. 6 lamps moving through chambers the size of stadiums that no light could finish crossing. Under it all ran the small human sounds of a team that had worked together for years, counted breaths on the climbs, low voices at the root notes, laughter swallowed whole by the dark. 3 days in, nothing had failed, because Ruth checked everything nightly, or so the checklist said. On day 5, she signed out of camp for the resketch, 600 meters, alone, standard for this expedition. What she didn't know, walking out of the lamplight, both of her spare lights had already failed, because a wet crawl 2 days earlier had got into their cases, and the cells inside had been quietly corroding ever since. An hour into the sketch, that is when the main lamp failed her, dimming from white to orange to a coal red thread, and the first spare came up dead in her hand, because water had reached its cells 2 days before. The second spare gave her 4 minutes of brown light and went out. What she knew, standing in a blackness with no edges, she was 600 meters from camp in a cave that punishes movement without light, and nobody would call her overdue for 5 more hours. And that habit, 3 is 2, 2 is 1, had just run out of numbers. Panic came at her in the dark. Every light was dead. The cold was coming. She was trapped by blackness. She sat down before panic could take the decision away from her, and made herself breathe until counting felt possible again. Because this is the arithmetic of the deep cave. At 12 degrees, sitting on bare rock, a caver's core temperature falls a degree an hour, and hypothermia starts taking judgment at 2. Moving blind among floor pits would be faster and worse. One surveyor in absolute black, 5 hours until anyone looked, and a search area 240 kilometers long. Watch her do everything the manuals ask, in the dark, from memory. First, insulate, pack under her, survival blanket around her, knees to chest, off the heat thief rock. Second, make herself findable, whistle blasts in 3s, space to save breath, into a silence that swallowed them whole. Put yourself on that floor for 1 minute of it. A dark so complete your open eyes invent colors. Cold climbing your spine 1 vertebra at a time. And arithmetic you cannot stop running, because arithmetic is the only thing left to look at. The team logged her overdue at 9 that night and swept the survey lead in pairs, lamps and whistles working outward from camp through the breakdown. They found her at 1 in the morning, 40 meters off the survey line in a floor maze, sitting exactly as the manuals ask, knees to chest, blanket tucked, whistle still looped around 2 fingers. She had done every single thing right, in order, by feel. Ruth Calloway died of hypothermia in LECHUGUILLA, sometime in the 6th hour of the dark, 600 meters from a camp with light and heat and 5 people in it. The whistle reached no one through 200 meters of breakdown. The recovery took the team 4 days. The inquiry ruled the death a light system failure, following water damage, and the expedition rules changed that season. No solo pushes of any length, spare lights sealed in dry bags and tested at every camp, and a radio beacon at every survey lead. The deepest limestone cave in the continental United States still runs its black kilometers under the desert, still 12 degrees, still a week long. Survey teams still go, in pairs now, their spares sealed and tested, and the briefing reads her rule back to them with 1 line added. 3 is 2, 2 is 1, 1 is none, Ruth used to tell her son. The cave got all 3. Seal the spares, count them wet, not dry. On June 18, 2026, Merritt Solberg dropped through a pond in the Florida woods and into Eagle's Nest, the deadliest cave dive in America, a chimney of dark water opening into a ballroom 200 meters wide. The pond looks like nothing. Divers call it the Everest of cave diving. It has earned the name both ways. She was diving with one partner, down the chimney to the ballroom at 55 meters on trimix, a survey line check through the north restriction, and back on a 2-hour gas plan. Merritt was 35 years old, a ferry engineer from Norway who had logged 700 cave dives across 11 years, the one her team gave the tightest line work to. Her habit was steel. 2 cutting tools on every dive, one on the chest, one on the thigh. Because the line that saves your life, she told her students, is the same line that can take it. The plan was strict. 55 meters, 20 minutes at depth, gas checked at every stop. What she didn't know, the winter had already rigged a trap on the north line. Here is what you need to understand about Eagle's Nest. The ballroom is so wide your light touches nothing in any direction, and the only geometry down there is the guideline itself. A diver who leaves the line is lost in open black water. A diver wrapped in it is worse, held fast by the one thing built to lead them out, while the cylinders on their back count down 2 hours of gas. The descent ran clean. 2 lights dropping down the chimney, regulators hissing slow and even, tank valves clanging once off the limestone lip, fin wash rolling silt smoke off the slope, the ballroom opening under them like a night sky with a floor. They reached the north restriction on schedule, and Merritt went through first, easing along the old survey line, a line that had never once failed her, because lines at Eagle's Nest are checked every season. What she didn't know, a rockfall in the winter had slackened this one by 2 meters, and the slack was hanging in the restriction like a snare. Halfway through the restriction, that is when the line took her, because 2 meters of slack drifted over her shoulder in the fin wash and settled, quietly, perfectly, between her tank valves and the manifold bar. Her next kick pulled the loop tight, and the cave stopped her like a dog hitting the end of a chain. What she knew, jammed in a slot she could not turn around in. The wrap was behind her head, in the one place her own hands barely reach, at 55 meters, on a shrinking deco clock. And that habit, 2 cutters, one on the chest, one on the thigh, was about to be the whole dive. Panic pulled at her regulator. She was trapped at depth. The line held her fast. Silt smoked up the slot. She put her breathing back in its box, one long exhale at a time. Because this is the arithmetic of a wrap at 55 meters. Hard work triples gas use. Her tank pressure was a countdown of 40 minutes she could hear in her own ears, and every pull against the loop cinched it tighter on the manifold. One diver hung snared in a slot. One partner waited on the far side of the restriction, and the line between them had no give in it at all. Watch 11 years of drills spend themselves in 90 seconds. First, stop. Hands off the line. 3 slow breaths to bring the gas curve down. Light held still so her partner could read the trouble. Second, the chest cutter, drawn blind, walked backward over her shoulder along the taut line to the wrap she could not see. It was the exact drill she ran on land, in a kitchen chair, with her eyes shut, every single month. Put yourself in that slot for 1 minute of it. A steel blade moving behind your own head, silt closing your light down to a brown glow, and a tank gauge falling while you work by feel alone. The line parted on the 3rd stroke, and the loop slid off the manifold with a click she felt through her spine. Her partner tied the cut ends off to a rock spur, relaying the route out past the slot that had trapped her, and they came up the chimney on their stops. Gas checked at every one, the pond's green disk growing above them like a slow sunrise. They surfaced 11 minutes over plan, with 60 bar to spare, and floated in the warm pond water until their hands stopped shaking. Both divers survived on 2 cutters and 90 seconds of trained stillness, and the incident report changed the site's rules that summer. The north line was retensioned and sleeved. Slack checks joined the pre-dive flow, and no team passes the restriction without cutters reachable by either hand. The deadliest cave dive in America still sits under its quiet pond in the Florida woods, still opens into black water the width of a stadium, and its lines still hold every diver's way home. Merritt still runs the blind cutter drill in a kitchen chair once a month, 700 dives on. The line that saves your life can take it, she tells her students. So carry 2 blades, and learn the reach behind your own head before you need it.